So hopefully we've got everybody. Right, so let's make a start. So welcome to the first Creative Academic Creative Higher Education Open Mic event. This is our contribution to World Creativity and Innovation Day, which is today. Introducing your hosts, Tom Burns and myself, Pip. I think Creative Higher Education has participated in World Creativity Day for the past 4 years, but we haven't done something like this before. So this is a new adventure for us. Last night there was a fabulous event with Ailsa involving a lot of dancing, as I understand. So that sounds fantastic as a warm-up act, and this is the second part of this. May I remind you that it is important when one other person is speaking to try to mute, just to make sure we can appreciate and listen to everybody. Fabulous. I mute, therefore I am. Okay, so the idea for the open mic is that it's an opportunity for the creative higher education community to share original work. I absolutely love listening to people's creative work, their own ideas. There's something so special about that, and that's what tonight's about. I have a lovely set list, which can be subject to change if people need to be flexible. This is no problem at all. There's a spare slot at 18:30, and if no one takes it, we can move on, or if anyone feels inspired, they're most welcome to share. So we've got 5-minute slots each. Let's really try to stick to that, just so we can get through everyone and listen to what everyone has to bring. Some reminders, we are recording the event. If for whatever reason you don't feel comfortable, please just let me know in the chat, or send me a message on Twitter at PipMac6. This is no problem at all. We can just pause the recording or edit the recording subsequently. So let's, again, as I've said, muting when someone else is speaking. Tom and I will introduce each act. We'll take turns, and this is based on the information you've provided. Again, no hate speech, and if we break the rules, obviously we know that we need to kind of deal with that and maybe mute somebody or kick them out. Oh dear. So let's play nice. Let's enjoy it. Just to get you all in the mood, I've written a kind of pre-event poem. So we're gathered together this evening on Zoom for an open mic, I assume. We can share our creative work and ideas, and we can let go of all the fears. Whether we're here as first-timers or poetry pros, there's a space for everyone at this big show. So thank you for sharing, and creativity can be caring, for taking the time. This is more fun than Amazon Prime. What would Alexa say? Creativity is the way. Animation, poems, an opportunity to think. I'll raise my glass, so let's have a drink. So from Tom and I, let's light the fire. We'll have a great time, so enjoy the night. Right, so first on the list for today's performers, we have none other than the organizer for last night's event, Norman Jackson. So Norman, would you like to take the stage, so to speak?
Okay, just a two-minute introduction then. About 10 years ago, my 5-year-old grandson was having a birthday, and I thought, oh, I'll try and create a story for him. And I loved his imagination. We'd go on the hills behind where I live and had these sorts of adventures. And I collaborated with an artist called Kiboko Hachion and a sound technician called Ed Sillers. And so this is if you like, the collaborative enterprise is this story now. Hopefully it will play.
Max had spent the morning playing his favourite game of being Spider-Man in the garden with his granddad. Although he'd had lots of fun, he was ready for a real adventure. The sort where you don't know what's going to happen next. Every so often the swing would lift him high above the fence and he would see the white chalk quarries on the hill. "I know," he said, turning to his granddad. "Let's walk up Chalk Mountain." Chalk Mountain was, according to Max, a magical place where, with a bit of help from his granddad, he knew he'd find an adventure. And Grandad was also in the mood for an adventure. Looking at his round tummy, he knew he should exercise a bit more. So after pulling on their Wellington boots, they set off up the muddy path to the gate that led up the mountain. And so was Spotty too, as he barked and wagged his tail for all it was worth. They walked along the road until they came to the creaking gate that guarded the path to Chalk Mountain. It was one of those tricky gates, the sort which allows only one person through at a time, or a dog. Once through the gate they climbed the hill, and Grandad started telling Max about how, a long time ago, people used to take the rocks from the chalk quarry to make lime and cement. But Max was more intent on finding a stick that he could use as a sword to chop up the witches and monsters that were surely going to attack him from the dark places along the path. "And you must have a sword too," he said to his Grandad, passing him a stick. They hadn't gone very far when their way was blocked by some black bullocks who were munching their way through the forest. For a moment Max stood frozen. He was scared and he wanted to go back, but Spotty started to growl defiantly, and Grandad said that young warriors should not be frightened of animals even if they were bigger than you. He told Max to wave his sword, so Max waved his sword and shouted, "Go away!" and Spotty joined in too, barking at them. As if by magic, the bullocks left the path and scuttled into the trees, mooing angrily as they went. Max carried on shouting long after they were gone, happy with his own bravery, and Spotty was pleased with his own courage too. They emerged from the trees into the bright sunshine as they reached the top of Chalk Mountain. Max loved the warm sunshine on his face as he surveyed the landscape beneath him. From here he could see the world more clearly. It felt to him as if his whole world had suddenly grown bigger simply because he could see it from a different position. An aeroplane flew overhead on its way to Gatwick Airport. It seemed close enough to touch. "Look, Grandad, it's a dragon," said Max. Grandad half closed his eyes. It was easy to imagine. Spotty jumped up and down trying to catch a butterfly, but it was too fast for him. But these feelings of pleasure were soon replaced by apprehension, for just below him he could see the castle, an old tumble-down lime kiln where the giant lived. He gripped his sword tightly and moved a little closer to his Grandad, who tried to reassure him that the giant was probably asleep after counting his money and having a big lunch, before adding that just to be on the safe side, they'd better leave before one of his crows perched on the battlement spotted us and told him we were here. Just as he said that, a big crow flew over them, squawking loudly. Max did not need much persuading, and soon he was trotting along, clinging tightly to his Grandad's hand as they now entered the dark, murky woods that clothed the side of Chalk Mountain. Here the trees were tangled and twisted, and their branches cracked as you trod on them. The path was steep and muddy, and every so often Max slipped, and it was only Grandad's hand that stopped him from falling over. Max tried to be brave, but every so often he would look over his shoulder to see if the giant was running after him. Every sound convinced him that he would soon be caught and taken back to the giant's castle to be eaten, until he spotted the smile in his Grandad's face, a smile that said, "Have no fear, there are two of us and Spotty, and only one of him." Eventually they reached the bottom of the hill below the quarry. Here there were more derelict buildings and a large hole that was covered by iron bars. "This must be the place where the giant brought his prisoners," said Grandad. "They must have been thrown into this hole," said Max. He picked up a stone and dropped it into the void. It made him feel funny, leaning over to watch the stone fall. Then there was the sound of a splash and something fluttering. "It's probably bats," said Grandad. But Max had had enough. "Please can we go home now, Grandad? I'm feeling hungry. I want some of Mom and his rice." "Of course we can," said Grandad, "though I think your grandmother would tell me off for getting you and Spotty so muddy." They climbed over the stile into a big field under a blue uplifting sky. Even a skylark was singing. Max felt happy as he ran across the field with the wind in his hair and the sun in his face, waving his sword and shouting at his imaginary dragons or giants. He was full of courage again in this bright space. Grandad smiled as he thought about all the things that had happened, and it struck him how a little boy and his imagination had created something wonderful and magical out of his everyday experience. He had not been afraid to imagine and enjoy or suffer the consequences. He hoped that he and his new company would not be afraid to do the same. This is why he called it Chalk Mountain.
Back to you, Pip.
superb.
Thank you.
Oh, it hasn't come up. No, no. It's trying to do a. There we go. Norman, that was incredible. You should read audiobooks. Your voice has this kind of compelling storytelling element to it. Thank you so much for starting us off on a truly creative note. Yes, and Lee says, love the animation. That was really lovely. Thank you so much, Norman. Right. I think we have, who have we got next?
We're going John Muckle.
So that's not.
Hello.
Hello, John.
John.
I'm just about, I think you're going to get a spotlight, John. There you are.
You most certainly are. Yes.
Okay. Just before I introduce John, I'd like to give a shout out to Pip MacDonald here. Whereabouts it says Tom Burns and Pip MacDonald, it should say Pip MacDonald and Tom Burns.
No.
This was Pip's idea, and she's been a driving force for this and supported everybody through this wonderfully. So a big shout out for Pip, and also for the people behind the scenes, people like Chrissy Noransky and Norman that are driving forces within the creative HE community. Brilliant stuff. So I would like to introduce a really dear friend of mine, John Muckle, who I first met when he was teaching creative writing at the University of Essex and at East End Writing Collective, really supporting new writers and new poets and stuff. He's also a published poet, and I do quote this, he is one of the foremost beat poets of his generation. So I'm sorry if that's taking you back too far there, John, but over to you, and he's going to read one of his poems, essentially. Take it away, John, and correct me if I've said anything wrong.
That's great, Tom. Thank you very much. Yes, well, it's nice to be here. Thank you very much, Tom, for inviting me. It's nice to see and hear all the other writers, performers. I'm just going to read one poem that it's just been published in this magazine, PN Review. Here it is. There's the cover, and it's called Essentially. We sail under cloudy skies, distant traffic, where recently there was none, just bare streets. Swapping books with a neighbour you never see, picking up bits of knowledge from a communal skip, scrolling the homeopaths for platinum flecks. I'm working at a new secondary school in Essen. Bringing you news of this now, I'm in the mood. How to describe such an historical, interesting place? Words sometimes fail me. Sweetheart, I won't pretend. Without my phone, I'd just find it was missing. Over Essen, what you took for enemy fireworks were Lancasters, exploding mid-air, fully loaded. A blinding purple flare eliminated unlucky 7. Losses up to 60%, gone up into the ether. Incidents drift away, but you can't help remembering. A white elephant sail of memories. Is that racist? No. But pouring flour into a schoolgirl's handbag is, in case she wants to be white, not only in Essen. A monument's needed for something they never do. We have to imagine a new form for such a thing. Nothing you have said to me makes any true sense, or perhaps it does. That's why I replay the parts. Every scene went by, clawed back repeatedly. Modes of remorse came to predominate, nostalgia being a word I never used, with always regret. Essentials continue to be essentialized in Essen. Once armaments, We're now part of a wider culture. Children flock in trustingly, so pleased to be back at school, part of a community they will remember all their lives, whether or not that means anything. School dinner is always worse than you imagined. If only we could push the curriculum to one side of our plates, these discarded poetry bits and pieces, turkey twizzlers of a discredited colonial system. Let's agree to differ if you like. I'll make amends. Thank you.
Thank you. So did you say it was published somewhere, John?
Yes, it's been published in this magazine, PN Review. It's a poetry journal. It's been going for about 50 years, actually. It's an old one. I've never been to Essen, by the way. I just made it up. But I have been a teacher. So, and
oh, thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I do believe, Tom, I will introduce Joe.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So it's with great pleasure that I'd like to introduce Joe Fletcher Saxon. She is an educator in a further education college and based also in higher education, a research context. She's a feminist and a shepherdess, and she calls herself an accidental poet. The concept is very interesting, and she's going to read a poem she wrote very recently called Dear Patriarchy. So Joe, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Pip. And I'd just like to start by thanking you as well for being encouraging novices like me. This poem came about because as part of my research, I did a talk and then put the talk out in a blog space. And soon after that, an academic who happened to be a male academic contacted me to tell me I was wrong. And it's not the first time that kind of thing has happened. And so it kind of motivated this poem. But yeah, no, I'm not, I don't sit there writing poems. It's the first time I've ever done it, but it was quite cathartic. So it got published in a little magazine called CreativeHE magazine, and Pip saw it and said, come and read it here. So that's what I'll do. Okay. Dear Patriarchy, don't slip into my DMs to tell me I'm wrong. Sure, come alongside me, take in the view. Dear Patriarchy, you are welcome to walk with me. We are connected. I am of you and you are of me. Dear Patriarchy, I don't need to completely, accurately, faithfully understand that thing, represent that thing. I can think new things. Dear Patriarchy, we know that I cannot use your tools to dismantle you, so I will use my own, and that may look odd to you. Dear Patriarchy, you operate in covert, overt, and oppressive ways, but I can see you. We can see you. Dear Patriarchy, I love parts of you, especially parts of you. But I think we have trust issues. Dear Patriarchy, don't tell me what to do. This is not your gift. This is mine, from me to you. Dear Patriarchy, you have friends. You have allies. Me too.
I just absolutely love this poem. I love that structure of Dear X and the internal rhymes, the covert, overt. That's just absolutely wonderful. And thank you so much for coming along and sharing that. CreativeHE is I think that's where I met you, isn't it? In one of the ideas rooms. So if you're interested in that, look on Twitter for the hashtag CreativeHE. And the CreativeHE magazine is a really interesting place to publish your ideas. And poems for that matter. So thank you ever so much, Joe. Thoroughly appreciated. Tom, would you like to introduce our next performer?
Can I share my screen?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
I'll just stop sharing mine.
I will just go with what's in the box here. Is here we have two who enjoys disrupting existing UK HE policies. I do like people who like disrupting the curriculum and disrupting teaching. This poem, and we are going to go for a little bit down a memory lane.
Thank you, Tom. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Good. So a bit of history is I started with I notice as an I, me, and then it turned into something which is I notice. And it's based around a bit of experience around discrimination. And then I do a lot of work around intersectionality. So I had to put that into it, and it just came naturally. So I'll just say it. So I notice the color of my skin. I notice the color of my hair. I notice the color of my eyes. And whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. I notice the shape of my body. I notice my disability. I notice my rasta hair. And shush, shush, shush. I notice the tattoo on my face. I notice my burly figure. I notice my extreme piercing. And ack, ack, ack. I notice the rashes on my face. I notice my skin bones. I notice my patch eye. And back, back, back. I speak of how I feel. I speak of what I need. I speak with clarity. I notice. Shush, shush, ack, back. Until I notice the color of my blood. Khuda jane ye sukh hai. Ye na khud umeed Saravanan. A bit of explanation. Good. So the first stanza I wanted to refer to the unconscious bias. When I notice the skin color, the hair, and the eyes. And the second stanza, I wanted to refer to avoiding and then silencing, that is shush, 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 silencing the existence of people, that is discriminating them. And then the next stanza, I wanted to say, refer to the expression of surprise and dismay. And the next one, berk, is actually a French expression. It's kind of yuck, but a bit more like you want to vomit, to throw away, to throw up. And the other one, the next stanza, I wanted to say, well, despite people stand up for themselves, if I has noticed something, some unconscious bias remains. And then I referred to I noticing the blood, the color of blood, which is people are seldom appreciated in their lifetime, but then they're deaf, and sometimes they're horrible deaf, either if you see blood or they've died, and then we praise them. And Khuda jane ye surkh hai, it's an Urdu Hindi mix. It says, God knows it is red, which is referring to red here. And all of us share the human DNA. And Yinda Kodume Sharavananidu, that's a popular expression in Tamil cinema, which is very much like a face palm action. So you've got a problem, literally, what can you do? You can't resolve it. And it's also an expression that's used in comedy, because you've got such a huge problem, yet you don't know what to do. And you turn it into, you kind of make fun of it. And Sharavana is also the name of a god. And also in that, in Kollywood, that is the Tamil movie from where it came, that expression, it's the male protagonist name. That's it for me. Thank you.
Yeah, there we go. Are you introducing him or I am introducing?
I'll introduce him as
Okay.
as He is my big brother, and everyone should have a big brother like Jimmy. Jimmy is a golf professional and a coach, very successful coach, and a youth worker. I'd like to, one of his many claims to fame is Jimmy put on the first ever professional golf tournament in Cuba. That was one of the last events that Castro turned up to. So, so on this note, I shall hand over to you, Jimmy, to tell us some of your creative inspirations.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? That's the first thing.
Yes, Jim.
Brilliant. Okay. Shall I begin?
Take it away.
Okay.
Take it away, Jim.
On my brief introduction, my name is Jimmy, and I am a golf pro and a coach and a youth worker. And it's true what Tommy said. I was there, and it was an incredible experience. This is about making connections, and it was something that happened to me and must have happened to others. And in discovery of self and others, seeking a better, a bigger, a more cohesive understanding of growth, of learning, of discovery, finding a voice of action and vision, and learning to dance to my own beats. Being reminded of fleeting moments in the past that provide a connection to habits of thought and action that offer a different way of seeing and of breaking the habitual interpretation of accepted realities. Many years ago, while resting with a group of children that had just finished painting a mural on the outside of a building on an adventure playground in full colour, an 8-year-old was looking up at the gathering rain clouds in the evening sky and asked, "Jimmy, do you ever have big thoughts?" This was a fairly abstract idea, so I inquired as to an example. "Well," she said, "like a house on a tree, that's a big thought." I pondered, and then she continued, "When you think and you look up in the night sky and you see the stars and the moon and everything that's up there," the connection of her first thought and her second has always stayed with me. On another occasion, went on a visit to the Tate Gallery in the Tate Modern with my children, 2 of them, both under 6 years of age. We took one of the huge lifts from the basement up to the top floor where there was the ice cream stand. It's full of people. As I was looking at the children, they looked at each other and they were both laughing. And I was really interested. And then I heard one say to the other, "Wow, a room that goes up and down." The art settings for these connective thoughts on a group reality as perceived and accepted remind me of my discussion with the great Joseph Beuys at the Institute of Contemporary Art, the German artist and free school advocate. And this was back in the 70s. And I quote from Joseph: "Beuys believed that the creative impulse that shaped the work of art could also influence the world in which we live. And this conviction that everyone could participate in this reshaping of society led to his famous motto, 'Everyone is an artist.'" At the ICA, he was wearing his pork pie hat dungarees, and standing in front of a large canvas with diagrams that was like a mind map of his work in progress. And he was talking to a small group of students about the power of art to transform consciousness and change us and others for the better. His passionate discourses on education and transformation were inspiring and wondrous. And I leave you with a final quote. "To be a teacher is my greatest work of art." Joseph Beuys. Thank you very much. That was interesting or entertaining.
Thank you, Jimmy. That's brilliant. And Jimmy, after that meeting with Boyce at the ICA, went on to set up an adventure playground of his own and others in East London. And yeah, many happy days spent on it, Jimmy.
Thanks, Bob. What a great job you're doing here. I'm really enjoying it. Well done.
Well, that's why you invite family, Jim.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Well done.
Is Mabel with us this evening?
Yes, I'm here.
Mabel is a senior lecturer at London Metropolitan University in early years. She's also a counsellor and a poet, but also a big shout out for Mabel. She is an active researcher and supports new researchers, and she has just been elected to BERA, that's the British Educational Research Association, been elected to their council representing new researchers. So real big shout out for Mabel. Take it away, Mabel, and correct me if I've said anything wrong.
No, thank you, Tom. Thank you very much for that introduction. I'm sorry that I didn't put any before. Yeah, well, I plan to read 3 short poems. I hope it's all right, but I can see I can cut one of them if I take too long. The first one, I'm in Mexico because my brother is very ill. And so we didn't plan like a holiday, so we have been working here. But what I wrote is a poem for him last year. So I wanted to share that one because of the situation. It's called Gardener's Rice. When you make rice, make 2 cups at once. Don't wash it like Mom did. Don't try to make it complicated. Try doing it straight out of the bag. Start with the garlic. It gains nutrients while it waits. Cut a clove in tiny bits. Then cut an onion very finely in small dices that will look perfect. If you are on the run, chop the onion, and that's done. 8 pieces to the bottom of the pan, next to the garlic. After adding the rice, it's the vegetable's turn. Frozen, if you have some, or wash and cut carrots and take the peas out of their pots. Add salt and water, freshly boiled from the kettle, in a double portion to the rice. Put a good jalapeno chilito at the end with a cut lengthwise. 20 minutes, that's it. Fry an egg to lay on top and enjoy. Remember, Mom. So that's for my brother, Ricardo. Then I have another poem that is, I decided to jot some lines about education because I have never written a poem to education. So this is a first draft. And it says, education is not transmission, is not indoctrination or brainwashing. Education is definitely not, and I know best. Education is not broadcasting, is not a business, is not a customer-provider relationship, is not the customer is always right. Education is a relationship, professional and caring, a dialogue, which builds a belonging. Education, as some have acknowledged, it what makes us human. So that's a little draft. And the final poem that I will share with you is called Unchained Future. History can be as weighty as a dead body, as strong as graphene, as stuck to our skin as a tick as repetitive as an obsession, as an addiction. But history is not destiny. It's not necessity. It's not a tattoo on our bones. It's not a unidirectional movement that unfolds from the past. Because history is not only past tense, although it may have been the result of a tense past. History is practice, artifacts, and language, and none of them end with a full stop. Practice is action, using artifacts and language, continued flow, improvisation, change. Practice is praxis as in reflective action. We change in present time, finding the possibilities of the past, questioning our current normalities, pulling towards potential futures, changing directions, unlearning, relearning together. Unchanged future is now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mabel. It's beautiful. Yeah. Yes.
You love that structure of the recipe at the start. That was brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Mabel Unchained. Great comment from Sandra. Thank you so much, Mabel.
Thank you.
It gives me great pleasure to introduce Jasmine. I haven't actually got much on this, Jasmine, so I don't know if you'd like to introduce yourself here, but we do have 2 short poems, and one is called Evergreen, I believe. So, Jasmine, would you like to say something about yourself? Or
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jasmine. I'm a 20-year-old singer-songwriter. I write original songs, so these are 2 of my original songs. The first one's called Evergreen, and that is my latest release, which is on all music platforms if you like what you hear. Yeah, I'm a 2nd-year undergraduate. I'm studying popular music at Salford, and I'll be playing another song as well, and I hope you enjoy them. So Evergreen, I'll just give you a bit of context on this one. Evergreen is a song about like the contrast between the permanence of nature in contrast to like the impermanence of human life and humankind, and how we should take care of nature and respect it. Green, shine through the leaves, through the snow and the rain, the sun and the gentle breeze. We don't see the pain of the things that outlive us. We just see our selfish gain. Oh, we just feel so weak. We don't see the moving game, and you're so evergreen. What's it like to feel that way? Far from what we see. Oh, you've been there for decades, and then there's just little me. Deep beneath the leaves. Oh, you live on as we get buried beneath your leaves. Oh, we just feel so weak. We don't see the moving game, and you're so evergreen. What's it like to feel that way? Thank you. So thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate that. It's really lovely being part of this event. Thank you for having me, by the way. Yeah, I've been some really lovely poems listening to today, so thank you very much. So this song is an unreleased song. Planning on releasing some music in a few months' time, so if you want to hear any of that, it's just Jasmine Hapgood. This song is called About a Star. I hope you enjoy it. I'd say 1,000 words, throw them away, leave them unheard, 'cause you're perfect. I don't want to mess up your perfect. I don't want to mess up your perfect. I don't want to mess up your. I could hold them up like leaves, held by me or friendly tree, 'cause you're perfect. I don't want to mess up your perfect. I don't want to mess up your perfect. I don't want to mess up your. Can I wrote the feeling through words that had true meaning? No, you're far too much to describe. Words can describe how perfect you are, you son. 'Cause I could say 1,000 words, throw them away, leave them unheard, 'cause you're perfect. I don't want to mess up your perfect. I don't want to mess up your perfect. I don't want to mess up your. Can I wrote the feeling through words that had true meaning? No, you're far too much to describe. Words can describe how perfect you are, you son. 'Cause you're perfect. I don't want to mess up your perfect. I don't want to mess up and we're perfect. We'll never mess up and we're perfect. We'll never mess up and no words. Words can't describe how beautiful from the in and outside I love you. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you, Jasmine. And absolutely brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
Best of luck with your studies, Jasmine. I think we'd all give you a first if it was up to us. So yeah, that was lovely. I loved the sort of chorus of the second song. And that was, as I understand it, an unreleased exclusive preview. See, this is what makes this evening special. Thank you so much. Feel free to post links to your music in the chat. I'd really like to check out your music, for example, on Spotify or iTunes and so forth. It would be really nice to do that. Right. Well, I think I'm going to have a bit of a dramatic change of wardrobe for Act 2 and my exclusive Creative Higher Education Open Mic T-shirt. PowerPoint. So next, it is with great pleasure that I'd like to introduce John Desires. John is a senior lecturer and a tech guru, and he's going to perform a personal reflection and poem entitled Midnight. Take it away, John.
Thanks very much, everyone. And what I plan to do is just to share I was going to say poem, but based on all of the poems I've heard today and the wonderful voice we've heard, let's just call it a rhyme for now. In 2014, I went to a reggae festival in Spain. It is called Rototom, and Rototom is the name for a drum originally. But Rototom is a 7-day reggae festival that happens in Spain, commencing in 1991. It's starting in Italy, and they moved to Spain in 1994. And I actually went to my first concert there in 2014. Now, the message that the festival tries to give every year is thinking about the state of the world, social justice, and sustainability. And what they have done over the years, if they've decided to use reggae music as a vehicle to get their message across. And I'd like the audience to please bear in mind that reggae and something called dancehall are two separate things. Reggae is the type of songs that everyone knows, Bob Marley type of music he used to sing, and dancehall is the forerunner of what they call rap music now. And they're two different things, and they sing about two different things. Now, I went there in 2014, and I listened to a band called Midnight. And in that 2 hours I was listening to the band, I was totally transfixed with the vibe that was coming off of the stage. But what even was more inspiring was that I was among 20,000 other Europeans, mostly from Spain, and a lot who couldn't speak English at all. And the band Midnight use a thick Jamaican type slang to sing their records. And even I had issues actually understanding them, but it didn't make any difference. The crowd and everyone that was there were just mesmerized by this group. So when I rushed back, I quickly jumped on the internet to see maybe if they had written any albums. And to my embarrassment, I'd found that they had made 12 albums since 1996. And I'm someone who claims to know a lot about reggae music, and I had never heard of this band at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to just give you a rhyme that is based on one of their records called Love Right. I was going to recite the whole song, but after discussions, it was decided that it'd be better if I came up with my own rhyme, is what I'm going to call it. Okay. All right. So the poem and the song that it's based on is called Love Right and Live Right. Okay. So everything is going to be all right as long as we love right and we live right. If we live right and we love right, everything will be all right. Loving right is increasing the interest in fairness and pureness, tearing down envy and every separation fortress. Just as all needs, they need to be met and addressed. We need revolutionary attitudes to manifest positive progress. Living wrong produces divisions of labor, which has made every man less dependent on his neighbor. Now, in the hectic, hostile, ongoing speed of our survival behavior, man now views his neighbor as an unknown, aggressive stranger. It appears our ancestors were spiritually superior to everything contemporary. Man should have learned by now how not to make sadness repetitive. Man should have learned by now what not to emulate. Man needs to respect Mother Earth. But now, at this hour, is it too late? Not if we live right and we love right. Everything will be all right as long as we live right and we love right. World hunger and poverty needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency. They offer music with a Band-Aid to cover the need for open heart surgery. They say truth can be found in the pulpit or the university, but the poor don't spell check what they read or reflect with any scrutiny. Conquerors say, show him no mercy when he is weak. If he is strong, remove his ability to speak. It's essential to conquer all of his heroes and put his children to sleep. Say, if they fight back, it will only prolong and worsen the defeat. They purpose their violent deeds in the name of newborn baby. The infant tree is the name they give to their killing humanity machinery. When they wage war and slaughter the infants and the youth, they say it's for freedom and liberation. But is that really the truth? Rasta can't tell nobody what to think. We can't tell nobody what to eat or drink. But people need to feel and deal with what's real and work in their own way to reach their own spiritual ideal. No good can come of a world of billionaires and people without a cent. Some feeding rats steak while others try to scrape some rent. The poor keep building their houses on the sand, no better than a tent. What will history reflect? Nothing. They'll say that's just how his story went. Mother Earth is well equipped to feed all her children, for what it's worth. So there should be no water-bellied children going hungry at night on this earth. But the herd are hoarding everything for themselves. It's as though they didn't learn anything from the man or the other 12. But everything will be all right, as long as we love right and we live right. Remember, time isn't counted from daylight, but from midnight. Thank you.
Wow, JD, I didn't know you were such a poet, mate. Tech gurus, and a poet.
I wouldn't say a poet, but a little rhyme.
That's a poet, mate.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, JD. Yeah.
Thanks ever so much, JD. I really enjoyed that. And I like how you built it up to that final midnight. That was amazing. Thank you so much. So we're nearly at the end. Tom, would you like to go ahead and introduce Asper?
Right, this is Asper, and I suppose this is going to reflect on, do correct me, Asper, if wrong here, but sort of how privileged we are here at this moment in time, being able to enjoy each other's company like this, when things that are happening around the world, and particularly in Europe at the moment. I was saying to someone the other day, I never thought we would go back to be thinking about a nuclear holocaust and an end of time, and how quickly we are back there. So, Asper, if I have introduced you incorrectly there or introduced you in any way, we are going to have a deconstructed poem.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much, Tom. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen? Can you hear me okay? That's great.
Yeah.
So, okay, yeah, you're absolutely right. So one of the poems is about what is happening at the moment in Ukraine. And first of all, I have to say, I loved all your poems, and I admire you so much for being able to write poems, to write songs and doing animations. I don't seem to be able to write poems. I haven't written a song. But what I enjoy doing is sort of modifying pre-existing poems. And I'm interested in creativity. I'm interested in how can we help people be more creative. So I wonder, how can I help myself maybe be a poet or try to write poetry? And so maybe modifying poems is a pathway to that. So the first little poem is I came across it when I was listening to a BBC radio program about some horrible fires in Greece. And I always found the destruction of forest in Greece by fire kind of so sad that I was sort of I was almost trying to get away from Greece, sort of thing, just to deal with that. But I found this poem really sort of hopeful, because it tells you, well, you can still sort of, Greece is all about, olive tree, grapevine, and boats, and you can reconstruct it very easily. And that made me a lot of, gave me a lot of hope. So when things started happening in Ukraine, I thought, well, how can we sort of make that relevant to Ukraine? And so this is my attempt. So if you deconstruct Ukraine, you will in the end see a pine tree, a sunflower, and a field of wheat remain. That is with as much you reconstruct her. So the original poem is by Odysseus Elitis, who is a fantastic Greek poet. So that's the first one. Now the second one is this poem by John Masefield. So I came across in this wonderful charity performance on YouTube, and I really enjoyed the poem, and it kind of reminded me of what it's like to cycle tour in Sustrans routes, where you've got the signs and you're going from one side of Britain to the next. For example, every day you carry all your stuff and you progress in your trip, so you have this really lovely adventure. And I thought, I bet I can, with very few changes, I can make it very relevant to cycle touring. So this is what I did. So Sustrans cycle touring fever. So I must cycle down to the Sustrans routes again, to the lovely paths and the sky. And all I ask is a comfy bike, well-paved routes, and undamaged Sustrans signs. And the wheels kick, and the wind song, and my blue jacket shaking, and the grey mist and the pass on the path's face, and the grey dawn breaking. I must go down to the paths again, for the call of the touring ride is a wild call and a clear call that may not be denied. And all I ask is a windless day with the white clouds for shading, and the cooling drizzle and the rolling hills and some sheep baying. I must go down to the paths again, to the cycle touring life, to the Cornish way and the Dartmouth way, where the wheat's like a whetted knife, and all I ask is a merry yarn from a laughing fellow rover, and a quiet sleep and a sweet dream when the long trip's over. So that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Lest we forget, Asper, lest we forget. Yeah.
Asper, thank you very much. I think you can see in the chat that there's a great deal of praise, well-deserved praise for your approach. And I really like, I think I've said in the practice run-through that I really like that approach. So thank you ever so much for sharing that with us. Much appreciated. So we've reached quite a special moment in the Creative Higher Education Open Mic event. A huge privilege to welcome Dr. Lee Campbell from the University of the Arts London in his capacity as our headline act for the inaugural Creative Higher Education Open Mic event. Lee is a performance poet, a filmmaker and curator. I've known Lee for about a year now, and we met at an online poetry event, and I've really enjoyed his approaches to video poetry or to ethnographic approaches, and I've learned an awful lot from Lee about how to progress in the open mic world and develop my practice as a wannabe poet too. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce Lee Campbell.
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you, Pip, and lovely to meet everyone this evening. I didn't know what to expect, but it's been really a fantastic hour listening to all these different approaches. So yeah, I'm a senior lecturer at Wimbledon College of Arts, and I fuse poetry and experimental film practice. I'm going to perform a selection of poems this evening, just as like one performance, and yeah, I hope you really enjoy it. And if you want to stay in touch with me afterwards, I'll put in some links into the chat. Anyway, here we go. I, discover the same other while creeping, thieving, Discover the same other whilst under, see cover. Creeping, seeping, peeping. Covert operations, my teenage fascinations. Awkward altercations with non-queer populations. Sensations that taught me, if ever they caught me. Side cautiously deliberately blur words that infer derogatory slur. I got very clever at seeing without being seen. Spending longer looking at George Michael than learning his lyrics. My sexy Italian geography school teacher. My imagination in your class took me everywhere. Smuggling copies of Gay Times into my bedroom just to see guys like me. Gay kissing scenes on TV. My dad trying to hide his discomfort and sometimes not. Saturday afternoon football with my dad in the 90s.
And they've had to move the ball out because the left back of Coventry needs attention. Julian Preston.
Chelsea, 1996. Dad watched the match. I watched the players. Dad remembers the midfielder's tackle. I remember the midfielder's tackle. Dad remembers the midfielder being shown the red card. I remember the midfielder's red underwear. Dad remembers listening to hear who will next play against Chelsea. I remember listening to imagine the midfielder.
He's calling across. No.
Brighton, my first gay pub. Queen's Arms, George Street. Heart aflutter, legs like mush. The street was George, my previous crush. Here's where I learnt. Bigger the fish, bigger the tackle. Bigger the fish, bigger the tackle. The artists she taught me all turned out to be queer. Did she know something about me I didn't? My school teacher, Miss Cavalier, now so obviously glaring, my love of Keith Haring and Robert Mapplethorpe's photos of men erotic and daring. Yet, this was a time gay men were perceived. We all have AIDS, many straight folks believed. Maybe that's why I didn't fully inquire in the artists mistaught me. For me, as a teen, clever at not being seen, fancying men, being called one of them, George, Danny, Gavin, all my teenage crushes, geography teacher, adrenaline rushes. Balls and sports, men in shorts, football with dad, both happy and sad. Dad watching one way, me quite the other. Nothing beats a good tackle when seen undercover.
Just into Draper. Townsend didn't quite want it there, but he's managed to find Staunton. That's a good effort. Steve Staunton. Town of Young London. Right, Saturday, you can catch me, Judge Jules, alongside Jeremy Healy for the return of the 12. Also, the High Society birthday party with a massive lineup of DJs, including Paul Oakenfold, Dave Durrell, Fat Tony, Juliette Roberts.
1994, me, boy, no more. See me, see Lee.
New entry at number 1 on the Dance Album chart.
The King's Arms, Soho, where I learnt bears and cubs don't just live in the forest. Nervous yet emancipated in a space so animated. My first time in a place with men like me everywhere. How excited I was when a guy gave me a stare. The kind us gays know means I fancy you there. Come closer, dears, to best Aunt Nell, a bar in London's Dilly, so begins my tale, where days gone by a lily road gave danger and thrills to only seeking trade, frequented by fruit of a certain age, whose once sushi decor is now well past fade. In Bar Fabulosa, it was anything but, made famous wide over for the local slut. I'm surprised the Hilda handcuffs did not have it shut, for how a certain dilly boy Benny liked to strut. Dears around the bar from afar, Ajax, dressed in frocks and high slingbacks. Their expensive smellies could not hide the facts that this was Dilly's most prime of all meat racks. This feely Omi walks in, and before you ask it, you could see through his cats his boner basket. Amongst the antique HPs was one besotted fungus, who rather admired Dilly Boy's Cory bungus. Mincing around like a model in Paris, he gave him the name Benny Harris. A nice arse on a guy as not to embarrass. In gay Polari slang we say, he's got a Bena Aris. Dilly dilly, says Fungus. Hello, boy, no. I won't be strange. I'm Alamo. I know a brandy latch near here where we can go. You buy the Fogus, I'll get the binge, and I've got a coal if you like it. Dinge, don't get me wrong, I'm no size queen, but this Schwartz is cheap, just 10 quarterine. Sadly for Fungus, a Ferrica doozer, Benny's ewes are on the thews of another cruiser, but Benny's excitement soon ended in Sharda when the barman took him aside and told him to Nelly Yarda. Benny, may we, that number, it's nice to Varda, but take it from me, Andy only tips the brandy rather than Chava and Aspro Ava. Have a shot of Vera, your Varda, things clearer. She's part-time in the life, got chavvy and wife, not full-time so she parkers the measures to feel what it's like to have only pleasures. Look, she's on the Polari pipe now, dear, Nelly her mutter. Her taxi driver back home is her pastry cutter. Andy starts writing Andy a Billy do when all of a sudden screams of Betty Bracelets, Gardy Lou. A charpering Omi walks in and goes over to Ben. Benny worried he'll get arrested and locked up in Queer Ken. The Omi whispers into one of Benny's Polari lobes, you dare not repeat this, Nanty Penali. I think you're bone of ardering. Meet me out back 10 minutes by my Harley. Benny's rogering cheat is overflowing lech water as he's putting on the dish up this orderly daughter. Lily turns round on his back onto his Jim and Jack. Sniffing Purple Heart sees first time Benny's carts. Lily only shouts, you're Narda Tavada in the larder, leading to one fatal palaver. You promised more carnish up my dish. You're getting no gent, you lying rent. Benny shonks him on his onk as Lily tries to scarp her. Then Benny, doing his right, turns the murderous Ava. In front of the beak in the court of law, Benny retells all that he saw. I thought it was my heart he was out to shush, but all he wanted was my carts up his tush. Whilst in Queer Ken, Benny had the odd blag, but soon became known as the singing lag, finding fame as a number climbing the slanging tree. Benny became quite the star, believe you me. Did the other lags think his Polari songs naff, or could they see his talent in crafting songs so faff? Singing who cares if your carts is on the tad bijou, it's not the top inside your strides that makes you Bonnaroo, but it came as a surprise, lags singing about the colour of their eyes. Well, that's all, my dears, amen, Lalu. Off busy and dirty Oxford Street is a haven where city and rural meet. Sit on its grass, relax and eat. Soundtrack the drums of Hare Krishna beat. Whilst once teaching English in summer heat, Soho Square, my outside classroom retreat. Stone's throw from Soho, layered with meaning, where I first saw gay men convivially convening. In its centre stands a conjectural mystery, a somewhat odd misplaced nod to architectural history. A mock Tudor cottage for a lunchtime cruise. I on a bench as drunkards snooze, not put off by the stench of piss and booze. Men going inside in threes and twos with a mock Tudor jock or whatever they choose to get up to more than most do in public loos. Up the garden path my mind had been led, when years later I discovered it was merely a shed, whilst its trowels and spades were truth injurious, men curiously perusing the flower bed made far less salubrious, all in my head.
Thanks very much, Lee. I think you're the only person that could get larder and palaver to rhyme. It's incredible. I've heard these poems performed lots of times, but they're still, you know, a truly immersive and multimodal delight. So on behalf of the Creative Higher Education inaugural open mic event, we'd like to say a huge thank you for taking the time to perform.
Pleasure, thank you. And actually what's really nice about this is that it fuses creativity within HE, which, you know, is two. I think I went through many years of kind of having my sort of art practice separate to my pedagogic practice. And it's only really been sort of within the last sort of 5 or 10 years where those two have actually completely melded together. And the last 2 years, extremely so. So this feels like a really lovely kind of interdisciplinary space where practice has a has a real energy, and you know there's a really interesting there's loads of really interesting cross sections between pedagogy and creative practice. So it's been lovely to have you used this type of performance with students. I've well, not the sad thing is I don't actually teach the discipline. So my role at UAL is within academic support. So it's teaching the joys of how to write a dissertation, basically, the kind of framework to writing and research. But I've actually been doing a project with Pip. She was one of the speakers today as part of we had an afternoon of presentations about empathy. And I showed that performance to students within our UAL LGBT student network, and they really loved it, just in terms of, you know, well, first of all, being able to kind of empathise with a lot of the personal experience, because I suppose before kind of making that work for maybe 3 or 4 years, I hadn't really brought myself into my practice. And then I think it was really lovely when students were like, oh, I empathise with that. I had moments like that. And I suppose it also makes me a little sad too, because when I was sort of in their shoes a good let's say 30 years ago. Things were slightly different then. So, I mean, we've come a long way. And yeah, and also in terms of that, the stuff that, I mean, you should probably get the kind of undercurrents to what I do is language and humour and slang and kind of coded languages. And that's why Polari has been, the gay slang of Polari has been so interesting for me, because it also is very much steeped in history. And I think the students really enjoyed finding out about that. So anyway, thank you so much for your lovely comments. And yeah, I look forward to hopefully coming along again sometime.
Yeah, it would be amazing if you could do a nice cup of tea next time.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't got any visuals for that, actually. There seems to be one poem that I can't seem to get the visuals for. The nice cup of tea poem for everybody is a poem that I've written about my partner and about meeting him for the first time. And the experience was so lovely that I can't seem to, I think if I illustrate it, it kind of, I can't sort of visualize it. And but I don't know, maybe that's a challenge that I set. And I think, I don't know, Pip, is this going to be one of many, or I don't know, are you thinking number 2, 3 and 4? Because I think there's definitely some scope for this.
We did talk about the possibility of an edu comedy evening. I think you and I had spoken about how you'd gone to some comedy nights before. So there could be a potential for further experiments, but it's just interesting also to think about embedding a kind of open mic approach into everyone else's practice in higher education. So it doesn't have to be poems, it could be something else. So it's just kind of giving people a safe space to share original work.
Yeah, I just saw a comment, I think Joe has just mentioned about teaching creative methods within dissertation writing. Yeah, so we actually at Wimbledon, we have a department called, well, historically it was called contextual studies, but it's now called creative research. So it's much more, yeah, it's developing ways of getting students to share their research, i.e. not just writing a traditional dissertation, they can do, but they can also present it as a presentation, they can do it as an essay film, as a poetry film. So not just, I think initially that was to kind of create more inclusive formats, kind of from an accessibility point of view, but actually it's not, it's kind of gone way beyond that. So for example, essay films, poetry films, all kinds of different ways of transmitting that knowledge, which is not just the bog standard writing a 5,000 word dissertation. And of course, a lot of students choose that and do very well as well. So yeah, it's about opening up those possibilities.
Chrissy, do you have a question for Lee? Or is that a legacy hand?
It's not a question, no. If we are at the end, I would like to thank Lee and everybody who performed. I just want to say something, if that's okay. Yes, is that okay with everybody? So thank you very much, Pip.
Absolutely, Chrissy.
Pip, thank you, Pip, for organizing. Tom also, and Norman. You came a long way from the first time you approached us, Pip, with the idea, and it's really lovely to see it all coming together and having everybody performing in very different ways and being very honest and open and brave, I think, as well, and sharing yourselves with us, with a small community, but it is recorded and it will be shared more widely. So a big thank you to everybody who organized and who made it happen, and who all of you who brought it alive. I really enjoyed it, and I think in the chat here also colleagues are saying we need more. So Pip, Tom and Norman, I think we can discuss. And Pip, show us that nice t-shirt you are wearing. Sandra loves it.
Oh, it's brilliant, isn't it? Chrissy, I just mentioned that me and Pip have been doing this session this afternoon at Wimbledon or at UAL around empathy, and of course Pip had...
No, sorry, I can't see who's speaking, sorry.
Oh, hello, it's Lee, hello.
Lee, okay, yes.
Chrissy, I did a session with Pip this afternoon around empathy and pedagogy, and of course Pip had a t-shirt with the word empathy written on it. So I've noticed that she does like her t-shirts.
Okay, well,
brilliant.
Good to know. Yes, I don't know if Norman and Tom want to say also something. And Pip, of course.
I would if I
No,
could
thank
unmute
you,
my mic.
Chrissy. Thank you, Chrissy. And Lee, thanks for that. So powerful, mate. So
And
powerful.
thank you, Chrissy, for saying
yeah.
all those things about Pip and Tom. Absolutely spot on. And to see the idea come from virtually nothing into this well-crafted session is quite something, really. And I think, you know, it's World Creativity Innovation Day today. The core theme this year is collaboration. And what a great manifestation of people coming together to collaborate around this thing. And I think you've just opened up really a fantastic Pandora's box for the future. So brilliant. Well done, Pip.
Thank you, everybody.
And Tom, very, very well done.
One thing before you go. So it's quite important when we do an event that we evaluate it. I've created a very short questionnaire and I'm going to pop the link into the chat. Now, this is completely and utterly optional, but there are some questions just as designed to tease out what we could do better, what you liked, what you didn't like, and why. It's anonymous to see some comments. Then also bringing this all together, if I could say thank you in 1,000 languages all at once, I would. Thank you to both performers and to those supporting and listening. It's always great to have, you know, a pool of audience to perform to. Chrissy made a great point earlier on. She said that if anyone would like to share a link to any of their work or has a Twitter handle, then please do pop it in the chat and we can put it into the Creative Higher Education blog at some point or an appropriate output. And just the last sort of sentence I'd like to finish on is to say this, that we may not have it all together, but together we have it all. Thank you very much. Good night.
Beautifully said. Thank you, Pip. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Norman, and everybody else. Bye-bye.